I'm very pleased to say I'm joined by Irish commentator and a man in the know of everything Irish Greyhounds. Ian Fortune is here now. And sometimes, Ian, it's really hard for us to follow all the dogs in Ireland. You've had some really good racing recently, and of course, we've been across most of it. The first thing I have to ask you is, what do you think the situation is in terms of Irish trainers coming over here for our Star Sports Derby?
Well, I've no doubt that a few are still planning on coming across, although it's going to be very much in the government's hands and the way travelling between here and the UK is treated. At the moment, I believe there's a 14-day quarantine rule in place where the dogs come over early and people stay, perhaps send one or two over from the kennel. Maybe one come back halfway through and the other one go back and look after the dog throughout. But the likes of Graham Holland, most of his handlers, or most of his owners, should I say, are English owners, and I'm sure they'll want dogs in the English Derby. If that's not the case, you could see a few of our Irish trained greyhounds suddenly becoming English trained greyhounds, as we've heard one or two has happened in recent times. But yeah, it's interesting. It's very much up in the air. Like the likes of Liam Dowling, I can't see too many of his dogs going across to England to be trained by English trainers for the Derby and then coming back. If he can't travel, I would assume he probably won't.
So we're thinking maybe Graham Holland, Liam Dowling, Paul Hennessy would be three who have most of the leading contenders as far as the betting is concerned, three that we would expect to see here.
Yeah, the likes of Pat Guilfoyle has already said he's not going to come. He was a primary school teacher by trade, and he was on leave the last year or two. So he's back in work. And to be honest, he probably doesn't have the type of dog that he'd want to go to England. He is a sharper type of dog this year, a dog that probably wouldn't get the 500 metres. The likes of Peter Cronin may be interested. Pat Buckley, of course, we've seen them travelling over the years. A couple of months obviously before the English Derby starts. Pat Buckley has a few nice young dogs there, so it'd be interesting to see if he's interested in going across. He does have one or two people that could go across for him and perhaps stay there, the likes of his son Jack, you never know. But other than that, obviously it's a case of whoever has the dogs in the time will consider it.
Yeah, most of these trainers, if not have stayed when the Derby was at Nottingham, they have stayed in the past, so I do hope that most of them will come anyway. Difficult question for you now then. Your first three choice of dogs that you would bring for the English Derby. We have to take into account the Irish Derby is first. Anything can happen. Obviously, the ones that are short for that are generally short for the English Derby as well. But if you had to bring three for Nottingham, who would it be?
Well, listen, you got to start with Ewan Bok, or beg your pardon, not Ewan Bok, Lenson Bocco, the Irish Derby champion. He looks a dog that looks made for the Nottingham Test. Prior to the Derby last year, I was assuming it'd be a real 575, 600 yard dog, as we'd call them over here, that would be suited to Nottingham because of that long run home. But we saw during last year's Derby that a speedier type dog was very much suited to the place. And Lenson Bocco, well, they don't come much faster than him. Ignore his run in the Champion Stakes last time. I'm putting that down to a tardy start and perhaps a bit of a bounce factor. It was his first run after 8 months in the semi-finals where he won so impressively, but he really does look for Nottingham, and the change of traps could be huge for him, because if they are able to trap him any box, Lenson Bocco is going to go around the corner in front more times than not. And my next dog, I'm going to stick in something like Ballymac Cooper if he was to come. He's a hugely fast greyhound. Long run to the corner will really suit him down to the ground. He's still a bit of a pup despite his years. He's nearly 3 years of age now at this point, but he's such a talented greyhound. Had a bit of an injury, got over it, and was very unlucky in the final of the Champions Stakes when arriving on the corner, led narrowly but balked by Pastana, who forced his way to the front. So Ballymac Cooper, certainly a greyhound that I've had my list on. And I'm going to go back to Graham Holland. I'm going to put in Ewan Session rather than Ewan Taylor. Taylor is a 525 yard greyhound in my mind. 550 yards will be a struggle. I think he probably will get away with it in Shelbourne Park. I'm not so sure he'd get away with it in Nottingham. That long run in, like you see dogs coming from 5, 6 off the pace in that run in Nottingham. They don't do that in Shelbourne Park so much. So I think Ewan Taylor might get away with it in Dublin, but not in England. And I'm going to go with Ewan Session, a kennel companion of his, a dog who had won 6 from 6 prior to the semi-finals of Produce Stakes, missed the kick, found traffic problems, and suffered his first defeat in the Produce Stakes. But he is a serious greyhound with 525 yard pace and 550 yard stamina. He's a dog to keep an eye on. And of course, for the same owner, Simon Taylor. So I'm not insulting Ewan Taylor by not putting him in, but Ewan Session is a proper greyhound too. Have no doubt about that.
Really interesting. Ewan Taylor, of course, fresh off the back of winning that Produce Stakes. He's a 16-1 chance, but you think that Nottingham and the test that it gives the dogs could be a problem for him?
At the moment, I'd just be worried about his stamina. Of course, he's still aging, and he's he is strengthening. There's no question he's stronger now than he was at the back end of last year when he started his sequence. He's now won 12 from 12, and he's yet to be passed once in front. So, until he's passed, we can't exactly say he doesn't quite get home. But, listen, he looks a real 5'2", 5-yard greyhound. As I said, 5'2" or 5'50" in Shelbourne Park, when the place is on fire at the moment. Quick running surface, he'll probably get away with it. But Nottingham, that long drag home could really test him. Obviously, there's a lot of water to go under the bridge before then. It'd be interesting to see how he does perform in Shelbourne Park. And if he does perform in Shelbourne, well, perhaps they'll take their chance. They have nothing to lose at that point in the proceedings because, he's already won plenty of cash. I'm sure Simon Taylor, as a sporting man, would love to see his greyhound in action around Nottingham.
Well, he's as short as 12 to 1 for the Irish Derby, and as I said, 16s for the English. Lenson Bocco, incidentally, you mentioned first, 8 to 1 for the Irish, 10 to 1 for the English Derby. But there's a few others that I'm keeping an eye on here. Ballymac Anton, I think, is a great competition dog. He's actually 25 to 1 for the Irish Derby, a little bit shorter for the Star Sports Derby. Nottingham, 22 to 1. I mean, he just seems to thrive on competitions.
Yeah, he's a real, he was the dog that sort of, I'm not saying that he missed 6 months of his career, but he just didn't perform for 6 months of his career after being a superstar puppy. It took him a while to adapt to all age company. And then towards the back end of last year, really came back into himself. And of course, he won our St. Ledge over 550 yards at Limerick. He won the Gold Cup this year. He ran so well in the Champion Stakes recently. He's a dog that starts, stays. I suppose the reason he is a bit bigger a price than he probably should be is due to his age. He is approaching 4 years of age. He's no spring chicken. Although, he has plenty of racing, but he's not overly raced. I wouldn't be too concerned by that. Up to 4 years of age, they can really perform at their best still. And he's a dog that, as you say, he really is a competition dog. He's very hard to keep out of the frame because even when he misses the kick, he has that strength home. And in theory, he's the dog that should be really suited to Nottingham.
What about Wolf? Obviously, things went a bit amiss for him last year in Nottingham, but he did look like he was going to be the real deal there. 33 to 1 he is at the moment.
I'd just be very cautious with Wolf. He trialled, his trial was so bad at Shelbourne Park the last time we saw him, just after lockdown, that it just was too bad to be true. I've yet to ask Graham about the dog, so I'd just be wary. He hasn't appeared since. Perhaps there's an injury there. To be honest, I'm not sure. It's something I should have checked up on, but I'd be very cautious if you were backing Wolf.
Okay, and JT Taylor, obviously, was a very young dog last year at Nottingham, a wide runner. Perhaps it didn't quite suit him, but he's 50 to 1. Big price for this year. When we expected him to be better, albeit, again, he's going to be drawn out wide.
Yeah, he is getting on a little bit. He's a bit older than you think. He's a very fast greyhound. Paul Hennessy, it's about 3 weeks ago since I spoke to him about him, reported him in good shape, and he said, yeah, well, we'll have a go with him, but he hasn't appeared, and that's my fear. These dogs that haven't appeared yet, you just wonder maybe they're not quite firing at the moment. But in fairness to Paul, with the JT dogs, with JT Jet, certainly in recent years when he won the English Derby and he targeted the Irish Derby, he kept them purely for the 2 derbies. And maybe that's what he's doing with JT Taylor. If he does appear in the entry for Shelbourne Park on Monday week, well, maybe he could be worth a few quid each way for the English Derby, because that was the plan. He certainly is a dog that, if the traps being different to last year suit, he can go up faster than he did in Nottingham last year. And, we've seen he is a big engine and a dog that, certainly has the credentials to go a long way in the English Derby.
And a kennel who really know how to come over here and pinch it as well. I must admit, I'm slightly fearing the Irish team this year. I'm normally give you a bit of banter. I'm quite confident about our English dogs, but they seem to be falling by the wayside. But we do have Bocco's Doomy. He's 16 to 1 at the moment for the Star Sports Derby. What do you think of Bocco's Doomy?
I'm a big fan. I must say I was willing to oppose him in Nottingham last year simply due to his inexperience, and he was doing a couple of strange things around Nottingham, but you saw him in Hove recently, even not at his best, maybe struggling to the line. Very impressive in victory, and you know that much better can come. I just love the way he runs the corner. He gets in there. He's not afraid to throw his weight around. I think it was Patrick the other night described him as a bully going to the corner. He forces his way to the front. He has big speed down the back straight. He stays better than he has been doing in recent weeks. And yeah, I would expect him to be firing on all cylinders come October. He's certainly a dog, in theory, that should really suit Nottingham. And I expect him to be a better dog than he was around there last year.
One we've pinched off you is Fanny Minspeed, who's at a short price. He's actually come over at the weekend to Tom Hilbrand's kennel. 12 to 1 he is for the Star Sports Derby. Obviously, you've seen plenty more of him than we have, but I know Tom is very excited. Do you think he'll run Nottingham well?
he should be made for Nottingham again. The long run home will really suit this fellow. He only starts racing at the second bend in theory. He's a hugely fast greyhound. Obviously came in for big money support for both the Irish and English Derby. They've obviously abandoned the Irish Derby money. They're bringing him back over to England, getting him ready for the English Derby. Listen, don't expect him to lead around the corner too often, but he finishes like a train. He's a real competition dog. He won the Future Champion Stake down at Enniscorthy, a competition that's thrown some real superstars in recent times. He ran up the Comerford Stakes to New Taylor, flying from the halfway mark over 525 yards, 550 yards suited him better. He was third in the Easter Cup. He's a greyhound that will really be suited in Nottingham. You know, he's plenty short enough now at this point, but if I was to get 25 to 1, I could be tempted to have a few quid each way, because he's a dog that will keep qualifying. I have no doubt about that.
We're still sort of 8 weeks away, so very, like you say, a lot of water's gone to the bridge before the English Derby. But anything at a bigger price? You mentioned some young dogs that are coming through over there. You've got a great team. Anything we can pinch at a bigger price that could do well?
To be honest, my fear is that the Irish Derby is starting soon, and you know, anything can happen between here and there. Pat Buckley is a very nice dog called Glengar Bale. He's out of a bitch called Droopy Smasher, who was an absolute flying machine, perhaps a little bit of a character herself. She wasn't always on a going night, but she's seems producing a bit of pace. This Glengar Bale, he's only a handful of races. He won very impressively at Shelbourne Park the week before last. I wouldn't be surprised if he turned into a very fast greyhound. But as I've said, there's unraced stakes going on at the moment. Robert Gleeson has a dog called New Cody, who's really taking the headlines at Shelbourne Park at present, but there will be dozens of dogs in the next 2 or 3 weeks because of the condensed schedule. They're only appearing now, and people might just take a chance on running them in certainly the likes of the Irish Derby or England if they feel their dog is forward enough. These dogs will have plenty of schooling. Of course, the problem is they haven't had much racing.
Before we leave, I must get an anti-post bet for you for the Irish Derby. Obviously, as you said, the draw Monday week. What do you fancy?
Listen, it's very tough. It's very tough, to be honest. I see Lenson Bocco is heading the market. Like, it's very hard to oppose him, but my old pal, Ballymac Cooper, I still think, believe it or not, at nearly 3 years of age, the penny is to drop with him. He is exceptionally fast, and he's certainly a greyhound that'll be in the latter stages of the Irish Derby and perhaps the English Derby if luck stays on his side. I'm very impressed with Pastana in the Champion Stakes, a dog similar to New Taylor in his racing style, has brilliant early speed, perhaps not the stoutest of stayers, but he had enough stamina to win the Champion Stakes, and early speed will probably win an English or an Irish Derby this year. The way the track is going, it really is flying. It's suiting the top of the ground dogs.
Well, 16 to 1 for Ballymac Cooper, so he could be a nice little bet if you fancy one on the Irish Derby. Ian, thank you so much for your time. It'd be great if we could catch up again closer to the off of the Star Sports Derby. And in the meantime, stay safe and well, and I hope everything goes well with the Irish Derby.
Well, thanks, Julie. We look forward to it.
Thanks, Ian.